Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you, all panel here in Washington, for joining us. And Michelle Bachmann joins us this morning from Minneapolis. Well, the 112th Congress is set to convene on Wednesday, but I want to go back a little bit and talk about the last workings of the 111th with you, Michelle. In particular, that the year ended with this deal on taxes and an extension of unemployment benefits. Would that deal have been made with the Congress that's about to convene on Wednesday?
Well, that's a good question. There was a diversity of opinion on this bill. I voted against it because I was concerned about it not being paid for. It also blows a $111 billion hole in the Social Security Trust Fund. There is no money in that trust fund, so they have to go to the General Treasury, where there's also no money. That means an additional borrowing for that $111 billion, in addition to the $57 billion for unemployment. So we're continuing to go down the road that we've gone down before, which is spending money that we don't have. And that's really, I think, one of the strongest messages that we took away from the election in November. Stop spending money that you don't have.
Is the Republican Party in this new Congress, is it a house divided?
No, I really don't think it is. I think we're fairly unified, but of course, you know, we won't all necessarily be agreeing on everything. But I think you see a fairly cohesive group, that we have a singularity of purpose, and that we want to be able to get the budget in order. I think that's really job number one, because we want to see the economy shift so that we have a focus on private job creation.
I want to go to Congressman Weiner. A couple of weeks ago, we had a conversation. You told me that if the president extended a finger of bipartisanship, that it would cost him a pound of flesh. How do you see this new Congress working with the president? And are Democrats all but irrelevant from now on?
Well, look, we'll see. I mean, we've already seen on this show there's disagreement among Republicans about the tax cut bill, and I think that there are going to be disagreements to come. I mean, many of them campaigned on the idea of privatizing Social Security. They campaigned on the idea of making Medicare a voucher program so seniors don't have a guaranteed health care. I want to see what it is they're in favor of. I mean, we've heard a lot about what they're against in this campaign. I don't know what they're in favor of. You know, we Democrats are prepared to work with them where we can, but we're going to challenge them and fight against them where they must. It is not a subject of compromise for many Democrats, privatizing Social Security. We just don't believe that's a good idea. Eliminating Medicare as a guaranteed benefit for seniors, we don't agree with. So those fights are going to happen. As far as the president's interaction, I think he's going to find out that bipartisanship has to be a means. It's not an end. And that if just having a bipartisan deal means a success, that's not right. There has to reflect the values of this country and the constituents that I represent.
Mike Kelly, you're the new guy. You're going to take your oath on Wednesday. You've been around this town for a couple of weeks now. There was a piece in the Washington Post. You said you're not impressed so far. What do you hope to accomplish when you take office for real on Wednesday?
Yeah, I think really when you talk about are you impressed or you're not impressed, I don't think, for an average guy, a common guy who comes from a private sector, running something for $14 trillion in the red is not impressive. You run $14 trillion in the black, then I'm impressed. What I'm looking for, and in bipartisan, and I agree with Anthony what he talks about. Sure, is it good to be bipartisan, but on good legislation, not on things just to say we did something in a bipartisan manner, just to show that we can agree, is not good unless it was on something that was good for the whole country. So I'm looking to really go to work and work very hard. I've worked hard all my life, and I've done it with my own money. I've had my own skin in the game, so I'm kind of interested to seeing when you get into a situation where really it's not your money. You can spend anything you want, just throw the charge card out. In fact, keep raising the debt ceiling as much as you want, because you don't have to worry about paying it back.
Okay.
It's hard for me to sit and think that that's all right to do to the American people.
We'll ask about the debt ceiling in just a couple of seconds, because that is going to be a huge and important vote. But I want to talk to Debbie Wasserman Schultz about this whole idea of bipartisanship. Is this going to be a situation where Congress gets together and does the people's good, or is this a recipe for gridlock?
Well, that remains to be seen. I mean, what Democrats will do now that we're in the minority in the House but remain in the majority in the Senate and hold the White House is measure everything that the Republicans propose by whether it creates jobs, turns the economy around, and cuts the deficit. And what remains to be seen is whether members like Mike Kelly are going to be able to turn their essentially campaign rhetoric into some kind of reality, because with all due respect to his response, there isn't any there. I mean, we haven't heard any concrete proposals. Anthony's absolutely right. We've only heard attacks on what they don't like.
Right.
We've got to make sure that we continue the progress and the prosperity that we've been moving forward towards. I mean, the S&P finished the year up 86%.
Right.
The Dow up 16%. We've increased manufacturing exponentially. I mean, we're beginning to aggressively turn that economy around. Let's hope they don't squander that.
So here's a question for everybody. The government is funded basically till about March or so. There will be a vote eventually on raising the debt ceiling. Will you vote to raise the debt ceiling?
Well, I'm going to wait and see where the direction that the Republicans want to take our policy.
Congressman Weiner.
I voted against this tax cut bill because I thought it blew a hole in the budget. And I think the Republicans have come in saying that they're going to not raise the debt ceiling and they're going to allow the full faith and credit of the American people go down the tubes. It's their ship to run now. That's the responsibility. This is this is an adult game now, and the risks
Let me go
are
to
pretty
Mike
high.
Kelly. Mike Kelly, this is going to be one of the big votes, and you risk having the government come to a standstill.
Well, speaking as an adult who's always paid his own way, I do understand what happens, and raising the debt ceiling to me is absolutely irresponsible. We've been spending money for so long that we don't have and keep saying, well, it's okay. We'll just raise taxes. We'll find it somewhere.
Right.
Tax revenue comes from people who are working, people who are profitable. It does not come from raising tax rates.
Michelle Bachmann?
At this point, I am not in favor of raising the debt ceiling. As a matter of fact, I have a petition that I'm urging people to sign at michellepack.com to urge their member of Congress not to raise the debt ceiling, because Congress has had a big party the last 2 years. They couldn't spend enough money, and now they're standing back, folding their arms, saying, taunting us to figure out how are you going to go ahead and solve this big spending crisis. Well,
So
it was
you're
fun
willing to
when they
risk
had the
seeing the
credit card
government
and they were
shut down.
spending the
So
money.
you're willing to-
Well,
it's worth the
It's
risk.
not good for anyone to shut the government down. It's not good for anyone. That's why I think it's important for the Democrats, who are so willing to spend money, to now be a part of trying to figure out how we can be responsible.
So you want
hang on,
to be in charge until you're actually in charge. Now you're not so eager for the responsibility.
One of the first things.
we weren't
one
for
of the
the
first
spending.
things. Excuse me. One of the first things that we're going to do is vote to pass the Republican proposed rules package. And in talking about the debt ceiling, their proposed rules, and Mike, you talked about in your campaign the importance of one vote. I want to see whether you're going to vote for that rules package that gives Paul Ryan the authority to set the budget limits himself, taking away your vote that you talked about that was so precious, and taking the right of all of us in the House of Representatives. Having one member set the budget ceiling for the entire country is absolutely irresponsible and undemocratic.
Go ahead.
So this is what America loves. This is what America loves. Both sides pointing the finger at the other side. No, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. I got to tell you
It's not
something.
about fault.
When we talk about
What are you gonna do?
having adult conversations, and we really have to start acting like adults. We've got a huge problem sitting in front of us right now, and it's very amusing to walk through this. And I got to tell you, from being on the outside all my life, I don't know how in the world you folks go home and look these people in the eye and say, we've done a great job. We've done a great job. Your country's $14 trillion
Well,
in
you've
the
got
red,
the
and we're
opportunity.
gonna
Hold on a second.
we're
First
going
of
to
all,
keep stealing.
let me just say something to Congressman Kelly here. First of all, the you folks stuff, now you are one of those folks. And it is your job in the majority party to govern.
Yes.
And the first thing the Republicans did when they took back the House the last time is they drove the government to a shutdown. And I guess from what I've heard Michelle say and you say, that's what's going to happen
That's where we're
again.
headed.
But all the you stuff,
That's
that
not
has
at
to
all,
end
Anthony.
today.
You got it exactly wrong.
Hey, Michelle,
You got it exactly wrong. That is not what we're looking to do, and you're stating it falsely. We are not looking to shut the government down. No
Well,
one
that's the
benefits.
direction
But at
that
the
we
same
head.
time, we're not looking at wanting to continually raise the debt ceiling.
Okay, well,
that's something that
at
the Democrats
that point it
want to
becomes
do.
one or the other.
I don't
Michelle,
know
let
what
me-
you call it, Michelle, but
Can't
that's
have it
shutting down the government.
Michelle, let me ask you this, because one of the things the Tea Party has talked about is dismantling health care, and we're wondering if, in the end of the day, that ends up being a fool's errand, because no matter how many votes you amass in the House, and even if you could get the votes in the Senate, it will face a certain veto. Is it worth the effort to try to do it?
Of course it is, because Obamacare will bankrupt the country. And so you've seen that the more that people learn about Obamacare, the less they like it. It's very costly. It's unwieldy. So we will put forth a clean repeal bill of Obamacare, and you'll continue to see us make that fight, because that's what the American people want us to do. They want the real problem in healthcare is the cost drivers. Obamacare is actually raising the cost drivers. We want to adopt a free market approach to healthcare, and you'll see us put those free market solutions forward.
Even Democrats realize that the deficit is it's out of control. It's beyond reach. It's this weight that is hanging.
Even Democrats.
The deficit was, let's remember, the deficit was exploded by Republicans. President Bush inherited a record surplus and turned
Yes.
it into a record deficit. So two wars unpaid for, a prescription drug plan unpaid for, tax cuts unpaid for. So the deficit that we found ourselves in was thanks to the Republicans.
Is it addressable?
Well, look,
Harry, if I could just add, there is no equivalency.
Go ahead.
Look, I think that it has to be. And I think that there is a lot of room for bipartisan work. I mean, Time Magazine, without much sweat, came up with $100 billion of corporate welfare that they identified. I think we can find cuts. I've been working with Jason Chaffetz of Utah. We've found some cuts that we think, but there's no doubt about it, though. Some of the big things are philosophical questions. The Republicans have philosophically said they don't believe in the guaranteed Social Security benefit. They don't believe in a guaranteed Medicare benefit. We know that because,
Harry, Anthony continues to make these statements.
Michelle, you voted for that in the Republican alternative last year.
I'm sorry. It's very important to remember.
Have you met the young guns, Michelle?
All right, hang on one second.
That's Paul Ryan's proposal.
Finish your thought, Michelle.
Harry, since President Obama came into office, we've had over $3 trillion in deficit. We're looking at another $1 trillion in deficit. Let's try to just get our arms around that reality.
Right.
This
if we
is
can go back
massive.
to healthcare reform.
Hang on one second. Just the other part of that, there was an economic cataclysm.
We're now up to $14 trillion.
And by the way, you all just decided to give
down
everybody a tax cut for the next 2 years.
Harry, can we go back to healthcare reform for 1 second? Because that's one of the first things that we're going to do this week.
How is this going to get paid for?
Well,
oh, by the way,
which?
If this deficit continues, and the government can the government.
Oh, well, apparently my Republican friends believe that tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, somehow the bill fairy pays for that. I don't understand how that's supposed to work.
Can we go back to healthcare reform for 1 second? Because Saturday, the healthcare reform piece that was implemented was we cut prescription drug bills for senior citizens by 50%. We've already made sure that young adults until they're 26 can be on their parents' insurance. A constituent in my district came up to me a few weeks ago and thanked me for saving her $3,000 a year because she could put her 2 adult children back on her insurance. That's what the Republicans are going to be proposing to repeal this week. It's not going to happen. If it's about jobs in the economy and reducing the deficit, wasting time and money and adding to the deficit by repealing health care reform or on the attempt is irresponsible.
Hang on, Michelle. Hang on. I want to get Mike back in here 1 second. Mike, you've already taken a look at this. You're not going to take the government-sponsored health care program that is available to members of Congress, right?
No, I'm not. I've always paid for my own health care. I mean, I come from the private sector. Okay, I've been in my whole life. I've been responsible for everything that I do, and I think we have these conversations. And I think this absolutely goes back to the Middle Ages. We're worrying about how many angels we can fit in the head of a pin. We got to start looking at these things. There is a cost with everything involved. My early time here in this city, it's so different than where I come from, because I live in a real world where people actually have to use their own money to pay for things. So this idea that you can keep doing this or doing that, and I love this fact that we are going to pay for it. We are not paying for anything, not we in Washington. The people, the American taxpayer pays for everything, and that's what bothers me. There's such a disconnect between this town and the rest of the world.
This real world stuff is going to get old really fast. This is now your job. This is a serious business here. This is a serious business here, trying to figure out how you solve big problems. Yes, it's true. Social Security does have to be paid for. Medicare does have to be paid for. But this idea like the real world, I don't know, these are tough problems.
Very amusing. You have never, in your life, you have never done anything on your own with your own skin in the game. And I got to tell you something. While I respect the fact that you're an elected congressman, I do not respect the fact that you...
I am. We are.
Yeah, well, we are.
I get sworn in
on the 5th. I'll become part of it on the 5th. But I want to tell you something. This has got to stop being about who can blame who for what. Look,
it sure sounded like you just did that. It sure sounded like you. It's like us versus the real world.
Hang on, gentlemen, hang on.
I would hope you had more respect for your constituents.
Hang on.
I do. That's why I wouldn't have a deficit for
all right.
Mike has to go beyond. It's time to go beyond rhetoric.
Harry,
going beyond campaign slogans, which is all I've heard today from Mr. Kelly, and is all Ms. Bachmann really ever engages in. We have to get into deficit reduction, job creation, and turning the economy around. That's their measuring stick.
All right,
that's their yardstick.
Michelle Bachmann, very, very quickly. Do you see
Harry.
anything that you have in common with your friends from the other side of the aisle?
I would say if they want to engage in deficit reduction, that's exactly what we want to engage in, is deficit reduction. But it's so interesting, Harry. For 2 years, these were big, wild party down spenders, and now they're interested in deficit reduction. That's what we'll do, because I'm similar to Mike Kelly. My husband and I also started our own business. We also live in the real world. The real world is where America lives. It's not the bubble in Washington, D.C., where they engage in fantasy.
All right, hang on, and
what you'll see happen is
I will give Congresswoman
personal
Schultz the last word.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, very quickly.
We went from bleeding 750,000 jobs a month before President Obama took office to last year adding over 1 million more jobs created in last year than the entire Bush presidency alone. We need to continue that progress. We need to hold the Republicans' feet to the fire, and we will.
And if the last 15 minutes were any indication, it will be a very
Happy New
interesting.
Year. Happy New Year.
Thank you all very, very
Look
much.
forward to working with you.
Oh, that's what we want to see. All right. Thank you all very much.